Hi, welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy, and thanks for stopping in with me today. Today I want to talk about old world structures again, because I'm on this path. And I want to talk about old world structures, and I want to talk about an area that I've been looking into, because I've noticed that there are a lot of places in Florida that are built with architecture or pieces of buildings or pieces of roads or pieces of stuff that has been taken from other places. And so this leads me to the 1900s demolition business. 1900s demolition business, well, what they did was they would take apart all these old world buildings and then they would sell everything in them. So this one demolition architect, John Vogt, he did 2,500 dismantlings of old world buildings. This is why we're running into so much of this stuff everywhere that looks like period bricks and whatnot, but has been reassembled. Like Bach Tower Gardens was made from all of this recycled building materials, because he said in his biography, this is what set me down this path. I read Edward Bach's biography on the story of Bach Tower Gardens, and there's a tower there that he modeled after a tower in Belgium, but he had all the components to compose the tower, and the reason why is because he worked for the Ladies' Home Journal, and he came here in 1908, I think it was, and he worked in the Ladies' Home Journal, and he really didn't have any experience, and he became like their editor-in-chief and became super wealthy. And he came to Florida and found a spot of land, just so happened to be on top of a mountain in like the most sacred space, one of the most sacred spaces in our state. It's the highest elevation point in the whole state of Florida, all the way up through the coastline to Delaware. I know that seems hard to believe, but it's facts. It's written down facts. And there was something very special about this place, and we have a lot of the robber barons have been here. Edison was here, the Rockefellers were here, the Rothschilds were here, the Astors, all of these people were here. The Posts were here. The Post family was the ones that owned Donald Trump's place before. And how do you think that she got that place? She got that place because they would literally, according to this paper, which is based on 3 sheets worth of research of books and other things about the demolition business, that there would be people waiting to bid, because get this slickness. These buildings were so valuable because what started as them trying to get rid of everything from the World's Fairs to destroy evidence became this whole thing. So after they had the World's Fair, they let people come in, these wrecking companies come in, and they would bid on the whole thing. They would buy the materials and then take it apart. So these people that got cheated these properties and got paid nothing for them, sold all of the building materials because they had them dismantled, and then they would build their own, or they would do something with the property. So this is what happened. This is why these old world structures were made out of brick and they were covered in stucco. They were recycling brick from these old world structures. In 1906, they had an earthquake and fires in San Francisco. But what most people don't realize is that in 1902, there was a really big coal shortage. So we must have had some, and coal was so short that the price of kindling wood was exorbitant. These people that had these wrecking companies, these demolition companies, they were talking about selling the wood. And let me tell you, this was a process. When they went in, I'll read how they wrote it, because I couldn't even believe that they went to such great detail taking these houses apart. And then they set up mail order catalogs where people could order this stuff. And this one guy who bought the exposition, the first World's Fair exposition, he paid $50 million for it. The St. Louis, Louisiana, in St. Louis, Missouri, the Purchase Exposition. $50 million in a catalog of $50 million worth of architectural material. Fountains, statues, marble, brick, everything. And do you know how much this is worth? Like 200 and something billion dollars in today's money. The amount of stuff that was in these places was huge bucks. This had to have been like a big ass grab. You know what I mean? An ass grab for sure. So they were taking these places apart. Let me get back to what I was, oh, it must be over here. I have to read this because, okay, here we go. It says, some men start at the bottom and work up. I start at the top and work down. To maintain the stability of the structure and prevent dangerous cave-ins, wrecking began on the roof, moving down to each subsequent story. On each floor, the wreckers would follow the same order. First, they stripped the rooms of fixtures and appliances, doors, moldings, mantles, lamps, wood trim, pulled up the flooring using a pry bar or a blunt metal blade called a wrecker's edge. And every piece of wood was carefully de-nailed. They took all the nails out of it, kept the nails. And the walls, because the walls were plaster, Venetian plaster, they scraped the plaster off and they took all of those little slats of wood from behind the plaster and sold it. Can you even believe that? I mean, I wonder what kind of wood this stuff was inside these walls. Must have been some really special wood. So anyway, yeah, they the walls and ceilings would be tackled, the plaster was taken off and the lath removed. I mean, they saved everything. And then during the World Wars, because they've been doing this for a long time, during the World Wars, when they had the Second World War and they needed all the ammo, you remember, they needed everybody was melting stuff down. Well, guess what? They wanted all this stuff back that some of these people had gotten because, you know, they had carillon bells. They had thousands of those bells lined up. You could go online and see pictures, and it's supposedly a foundry. It's not a foundry. They escheated the foundry. They took the bells back. Some people, they melted a lot of them down and used them in the war effort. See, this war was a great, perfect way to completely destroy evidence and dupe the population at the exact same time. And then they created a silent generation that never talked about anything. But, you know, in light of this article and everything that I've learned about how all of these places were being taken apart and sold, I mean, you can just go on and on. It opens a whole new ball game. Like, is that why they were having lotteries? Were these lotteries actually because they were bids for people buying these structures? That's one thing. What about the insurance ramifications of all of this stuff? We've got fires, we've got all this other stuff. And you know, in the earthquake that was out in San Francisco in 1906, that after that earthquake, do you know that the government ordered all of the buildings that were, you know, that had damage to them, that they all had to be razed to the ground? And they recycled all those bricks and building materials. They absolutely did. Just like when they reset Key West and they pulled up all the roads and all of that stuff. I have some of those bricks in the construction of my house. My house was built in the 50s. There was a lot of stuff, backdoor deals going on in the 50s, and the mob was in Florida. Don't be fooled. They had their finger in the pie. This community that I live in, talk about history. This community that I live in out here is actually the community they talk about in the movie Hoffa. that is the retirement mobsters golf community. That's where I live. Do you know the two guys were brothers that started this community out here? One died and the other one committed suicide because he was so depressed. But I have heard through the grapevine out here that Hoffa could be buried out here, because you know we have a clubhouse down here that was a party place for them. They would come here. They had their own bar up on the top floor. There's a third level that was built on. It has an apartment and a bar up there, and an exit that goes out the back. So they could leave anytime that they needed to, and they could stay there, sleep there, shower there, have privacy, had a full bar, could have parties. And let me tell you, they had some parties out here. And a lot of media people lived out here in the 50s, and they used to have huge parties. My neighbor, the people that used to own her house, was the daughter of she was the daughter of some big shot at the Chicago Tribune. So Chicago was here. And she used to have these enormous parties, and there would be hundreds of people here. They would be lined up all around the blocks, parked along the side of the street. I mean, things was going on down here in the 1900s. The mobsters were all down in Miami and Miami Beach. And I'm not going to divulge any of my friends' stories, but I have a friend whose family was involved with the mob. And they were there, and that's where they're from. They're from West Palm. But, you know, the mob was here. And, you know, there was a lot of shady stuff that was going on. And so I don't think that we should discount the fact that, you know, and, you know, one other thing that I thought was interesting was I ran across something about Charles Schwab. Now, you know, the Schwab family is like this huge investment magnate company. Well, Charles Schwab originally started out as a grocery store clerk, and he didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, according to this article. And then he went to work for Carnegie at Standard Oil Company, and just moved right on up the ladder from selling groceries to a big shot in an oil company. And he had one of these houses built from a dismantled building. He bought a bunch of these used things, and he had a house built, and it cost him $3 million. You know, he went broke. Which I find amazing is that these people were robbing Peter to pay Paul. They didn't have nothing, and they wanted to live in these big fancy houses. If you ask me, I think that all these people were just in debt up to their eyeballs, truthfully, because he didn't have any money. He went bankrupt. But then you also have to think, you know, if he did that, who else did that? And then you also have to look at, you have all these different kinds of architects that just show up in the 18 and 1900s when all these buildings just caught on fire and they were digging them out of the ground. Well, you know, you have these people that have nothing, and then all of a sudden they have the railroads, they have the shipping, they have, you know, they're running riverboats up and down the river. You've got lumber yards. You've got people that are in all kinds of business. They're in the tunnel business. They're in all kinds of business, and you think, and then they have these huge houses and these huge buildings, and you think, how in the world did they afford these? They did not get these. They did not pay for these places. These places were stolen through an escheatment process. And then you also have to think, well, who was living in these houses? I'm sure that there were some people living in these houses, because nobody in their right mind is going to have a house that looks like Mar-a-Lago does inside, and that they're just going to up and just walk out of it and leave all their fixtures, their lamps, their furniture, their paintings, you know, all this stuff. It makes you think, insurance schemes, you know, it just takes you down a whole avenue of, you know, insurance scams. And, you know, they were doing a lot of insurance scams around that time. You know, what they were doing was they were murdering people and collecting insurance claims on them. That's why they modified their policies, because they didn't have all the clauses in there right. So people would just like befriend people and then they'd off them and collect their insurance, or they'd just murder somebody and pretend to be them or something. I don't know. There were all kind of scams going on. I was reading about it when I was trying to find out more about what kind of insurance claims were being filed on these old world buildings when they were caught on fire. You know, and then if there's $217 billion worth today's money in these world fairs and architecture, fountains, expositions, you know, equipment, the whole nine, art, everything. They gave it, that's $17 billion. We're talking a lot of money was floating around here, a lot of money. I wonder what or if any of that was flowing back through the government. I mean, what year was it that they started the Federal Reserve and the banking system? I have to double check on that one. But, you know, it just makes you wonder, was it all intentional? You know, we have the war effort. We have these people parting out all of these buildings. You know, they're taking them apart. They're destroying the World's Fairs. These World's Fairs were already here. I think that the Greek people built these World Fairs. You have all these different styles of architecture. And there's definitely an intention behind getting rid of these structures too. And the reason I say that is that Ron DeSantis, our glorious governor, which I've always respected Ron DeSantis, but this right here, I'm not happy about. Florida speeds a law of the demolition of iconic buildings in Miami Beach. So a new land law in Florida limits the ability of municipalities to prevent demolition of aging coastal buildings. And this includes architectural icons that have been granted local historical status. So the law creates exceptions for buildings that are on the National Register of Historic Places, but it notably does not exempt municipal historic designations. Okay? We're talking like estuaries, historical destinations like public beaches. We're talking the whole nine. It just says that the people that are against it feel like I do. Let's just bulldoze the past. That's their idea. They're trying to get rid of the past. They're trying to get rid of the past. And they have a preservation league called Miami Design Preservation League. And the law allows owners to demolish buildings in high-risk coastal flood zones if local officials deem the structure unsafe or if the buildings don't conform to the base flood elevation requirements set by FEMA. Okay, so how does FEMA assess this? Do they assess this from insurance adjusters that come out here and check these areas and decide how they're going to zone them for flooding? Who makes this decision on what areas these are going to be? Oh, wait a minute. Is that the government? Yeah, that's government. FEMA's the government. So, yeah, I think it is. I think it's an intent to bury history. I sure do. Yep, destroying the past. So, yeah, and so everybody, all the lawmakers, of course, you know, everybody butters each other's bread. So there you have it. So they support it 36-2 and 86-29 in the House. Yep. Sad, sad days. They want to completely destroy everything that we have. I mean, this all started in about 1215 when they signed the Magna Carta, is when all of this stuff started happening. So I think that these buildings are from the 1200s. I thought that they could be as old as 3,000 years, according to the Greek architecture. But I definitely think that they were being taken away from these original builders in the 1200s. Because that's when they signed the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta. That's when they signed the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta was in the year 1215. And that's when everything got turned up on its head with the church. That's when the whole process, the ball started rolling, really, really rolling. We had Spain come over here, and you can't tell me that these buildings and this architecture, even if they've taken it from one place and put it in another, like my courthouse that I put a video on, the Bartow County Courthouse, I think that that's one of the original buildings that's been untouched. And I was so glad that I was able to catch the bell, because they still have the Carillon bell up in the tower, but there's some kind of light or something that was on the top. Now, you have to remember that this place was the highest elevation point in the state of Florida. So I don't know if they had a light on there and it was like a lighthouse, or if they had some type of laser or something like that, because you know they were using lasers. They were using laser weapons, and Tesla, he did one at Wardenclyffe. He did a replica of it, that laser. They were using that technology in the way ancient past, because they had a war. They had two warring sects. Bad, dark goes against the light, and they were fighting each other, and light lost. But they've been in the shadows. So anyway, I wanted to talk about the demolition, because I think that we got a lot of stuff to be looking into. This is very interesting. And I say that, you know, they always say that if you want to find something out, you got to follow the money. So we're following the money. We're following all of the clues that are hid in plain sight, because there's so much stuff that's just hidden in plain sight with all this stuff. So with that, I'm going to end it, because I was super excited to be able to share all this, and I'm doing some research right now on my family, and I'm looking into to try to find out for certain if Thomas Jefferson was related to Meriwether Lewis. I have a strong suspicion that they were, because I went back and was looking at our family tree, and there are a lot of people named Meriwether and Lewis in our family, and that was like a big thing. If there was somebody that was really special in our family line, they would just like keep repeating the name and naming over and over and over and over and over again. It was like a notorious thing with Nancy's and Jane's and Lee's and all these things, because the Lee families in the Randolph family too. It was the Jeffersons, the Lee family, the Randolph family, and I mean the Adams family. You see, my family line married into the Adams too. My great grandmother, her mother was an Adams, and her dad was a Randolph. So the Adams, they were all related. They were all related. That's why that government came together like it did, because they were all family. They were all family. Everybody was related, except for Hamilton. He was not related. And probably why him and Thomas Jefferson did not get along. You know, they had completely different views on seeing things, but you know, they came from two different schools of thought. You know, the Jeffersons and the Randolphs, they were schooled in the old Greek ways, you know, with the philosophy and theosophy and all of those things, Pythagorean math and the Stoics, and they enjoyed that kind of stuff. But it also gave them a different kind of mindset. So him and Alexander Hamilton had completely different types of mindsets. And maybe Thomas Jefferson was just kind of an old soul. He could have been. I think I am. You know, and I almost can understand him too, because, you know, I'm misunderstood a lot. And I'm not for everybody, I'll tell you. Little me goes a long way, I understand that. But, you know, I'm not for everybody, but I know I'm special. And I know that I'm here and I have a purpose, and that you're my brother and sister out there. We're all connected, you know? So with that being said, I just wanted to talk about that, because I just find it fascinating that now we have everything's moved around. So we're basically going to have to look at the bricks themselves. Are they red? Are they brown? Are they coquina? What are they, you know? And then what else is built into the assembly of it? You know, the shapes. Because a lot of these columns and a lot of these carved sculptures and different carved marble things that they put on the outside of these buildings, these people put them on their buildings as decoration, and some of them didn't know what it meant. They just thought it looked expensive, you know, because it was. You know, so anyway, there's going to be a lot of clues and photographs, so we really got to take those things apart. So thanks for stopping in. It was 25 minutes. It was a long video, but man, I thought it was interesting, and I hope that you did too. So when you come looking for me, I'll be here. We're in the past, the present, the future, all at the same time. So I would tell you to go outside and put your feet in the grass if you have any sun, but here it's raining today, and that's okay because it's been hot, and all God's creatures need water. So thanks for stopping in and watching me on Sacred Enzyme, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.